Good afternoon from Solent University in Southampton. It's a pleasure to be here. I was asked to say a few words today about the implications of COVID-19 on crews working on board ships, on the seafarers who are responsible for delivering most of our supplies ashore. I just want to state the obvious that the global pandemic is an ongoing situation which keeps changing and developing on a daily basis. So take the information I'm presenting today with a pinch of salt, as this could change tomorrow for better and for worse. So today I'll focus on a couple of issues relating to seafarers' employment on board ships. As this is a pre-recorded presentation, I might be repeating some of the topics that were already covered prior to my presentation. The COVID-19 pandemic has put seafarers around the world in unpredictable situations. For example, travel restrictions mean some seafarers cannot leave their ships, be repatriated home, or even get urgent medical assistance. Today, I'll be focusing on several aspects of this unpredictability, including COVID-19 and the shipping industry, travel restrictions, prolonged stays on board, mental health problems, discussing some of the things that has been done so far, and to see how this compares to other industries, the situation in shipping, with a short view to the future. In terms of the general implications for seafarers, according to the IMO, as of early September 2020, it's estimated that more than 300,000 seafarers remain on board commercial vessels, unable to be repatriated and past the expiry of their contract. A similar number of seafarers urgently need to join ships to replace them. On any given day, nearly 1 million seafarers are working on some 60,000 large cargo vessels worldwide. The duration of seafarers' contracts varies, but they typically work between 4 and 6 months on ships, followed by a period of leave. When at sea, they often work 10 to 12-hour shifts, 7 days a week, performing tasks that require constant professional attention. Seafarers spending extended periods on board are more at risk of adverse health effects, including physical and mental health issues. Thousands of seafarers stranded on board ships have already expressed their exhaustion, fatigue, anxiety, and mental stress, and a physically and mentally fatigued seafarer has a much higher risk of being involved in a marine casualty. For the first time in a long time, seafarers' contribution to society was emphasized during the pandemic. When infection rates first started, says Mark Dickinson from Nautilus International, our TV screens were full of people rushing out to bulk buy toilet rolls, hand sanitizer, and tins of food. When the supermarkets inevitably couldn't cope with this surge, people started to think more carefully about how their shelves are stocked and where their goods come from. There was a marked increase in the amount of publicity being given to ports, ships, and seafarers. In terms of travel restrictions, governments around the world have suspended international flights, closed borders, ports, and airports, and imposed travel restrictions to foreign nationals to limit the spread of the novel coronavirus. Those restrictions have directly impacted the capacity of seafarers to travel between the ships and their country of residence. The lack of availability of commercial flights has significantly reduced travel options for seafarers, and the situation is further complicated by difficulties in obtaining visas or travel permits to transit countries or even to enter their countries of residence, as well as quarantine requirements in some countries. Regulation 2.5 of the Maritime Labour Convention, the MLC, states that seafarers have a right to be repatriated at the end of their contracts. Flag states have a responsibility towards the right of seafarers to be repatriated, and port states have an obligation to facilitate such repatriation as well as the replacement of seafarers. Unfortunately, seafarers' work conditions before the pandemic were lacking in many ways, but the current circumstances have only made it worse, and it's left unclear when the situation will change and when also seafarers stuck at sea will be able to return to their families. The MLC further states that the maximum continuous period a seafarer should serve on board a vessel without leave is 11 months. This period may be exceeded in situation of force majeure, which many shipping companies used as a reason to extend seafarers' contracts several times. However, as a recent report from the ILO states, it's important to recall that the test of the applicability of force majeure is an absolute and material impossibility of compliance with an obligation in a given specific case. In contrast, circumstances rendering performance more difficult, or burdensome do not constitute a case of force majeure. In other words, from the moment that options are available to comply with the provisions of the MLC, however difficult or cumbersome these might be, the notion of force majeure may no longer be invoked. Thousands of seafarers have been required to remain on board beyond the 11-month maximum period. Based on seafarers' accounts on social media websites, seafarers are frustrated with the situation. Some have already spent over 17 months on board without being repatriated. Many seafarers who remain on board for longer periods are not paid for their extra time. Crews ashore struggle to find employment because there is no rotation of crew, and they find it difficult to survive financially because the work at sea was their only source of income. In the first International Maritime Summit organized by the UK government on July 9, 2020, seafarers were identified as key workers, which will give them enhanced rights. In this summit, they agreed to new international measures to open up foreign borders for seafarers and increase the number of commercial flights to expedite repatriation efforts. As of mid-August 2020, many countries have designated seafarers as key workers, including Azerbaijan, Germany, Islamic Republic of Iran, Japan, the United Kingdom, and the United States, among others. However, according to the IMO, the situation remains complex and difficulties are still reported. Even though some seafarers were repatriated and there were more crew rotation, this has not been happening fast enough. Many seafarers report mental health issues and crises due to the situation, which becomes urgent in some cases. This links up to previous reports on suicides on board during times of crisis. The IMO has also established a seafarer crisis action team to monitor developments, which often works alongside other organizations like the International Labour Office, ITF, and the International Chamber for Shipping. Furthermore, welfare organizations support seafarers and their families in different ways, including counseling and financial assistance to seafarers and their families. However, more needs to be done by governments, regulators, and shipping companies. It is hard enough to regulate a global industry in enforcing these regulations in the best of times, but even more so in times of emergency like those presented by the pandemic. Bearing similarity to what is happening to individuals working ashore, there have been several cases of seafarers being denied permission to go ashore to receive medical care, despite presenting medical issues that were urgent but not related to COVID-19. In some other industries, there was an enhanced use of the internet and work from home, which kept businesses functioning. The issue of internet on board takes up a new meaning in the face of the pandemic, as other industries managed to survive with the use of technology as an alternative to face-to-face meetings. This is not always an option for seafarers working on board. They cannot work from home, the ship is their home, and in many cases, the internet connection on board is not strong or reliable enough to be able to use it to contact their families, let alone work online. Seafarers have become frustrated with the situation, as many key workers might be ashore. Bearing similarity to healthcare workers, some of whom have become frustrated at being clapped at every week, whilst having their pay frozen and continuing shortfalls in testing and PPE, protective equipment. Seafarers were not too happy with talking of appreciation while suffering job losses, the erosion of terms and conditions, and inability to work or get home to be with their loved ones. Some maritime professionals are considering this pandemic as an opportunity to reset the current situation and improve ways in which this industry is managed, both in terms of the communication and in terms of crew changes on board. The IMO has endorsed protocols which set out general measures and procedures designed to ensure the crew changes can take place safely during the COVID-19 pandemic. So now it is in the hands of flag states and shipping companies to do the right thing and support seafarers during this global pandemic. The priority now should be on repatriating crews on board ships to give them much needed relief, as well as providing a source of income for the seafarers waiting ashore. That's all from me for today. Thank you for your attention.